Hello everyone, in today's lab I'm going to show you all fluid containers as well as emitters. So in this one I'm going to teach you how to do a little fire simulation. I'm going to cover all the settings and everything with you on it. So quick things to note, this is my container. It might be a good idea, you don't need it right away, but to have your outliner open to be able to select the fluid emitter, because sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to just click on it. But anyway, besides that, this is my fluid container, this is my fluid emitter. Now I want to go ahead and show you sort of what we're going to be working on. This is a finalized one. I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and you'll see I've got this little fire. Now the cool thing about this flame is that I'm actually able to render it in Arnold. So it's really neat. You know, you can rotate around it, you can see everything that's happening to it. It's pretty cool. And this is going to be like our final product here. You'll see I've got some black smoke in there coming off of the flame from what's burning off, and my flame here itself. So I want to show you what it looks like while it's rendered, because although this does have the the illusion or the look of fire, it's actually a little bit more crisp when you use the renderer. And you'll see it's still rendering. You'll notice down here it's at 10%. So I always, rule of thumb, don't do anything else on your computer till the scene's done rendering. It'll take your render longer. It might even sort of mess it up while you're doing other things, because it's using a lot of computing power to render this out. But you'll notice it's got some really cool little features. You got all these extra little sort of flames in different coloration in terms of reds, yellows, oranges, a little wavy to it, and you know, this is like sort of a flame dissipating off. Now, with that being said, this is kind of what we're looking for. Now I'm going to show you one more quick little render. I wanted to show you, I wanted to create some context. So when I was creating this, I was thinking of the little torch that I did as a demo for the midterm, for my midterm demonstration. And I added some campfire logs to this. You know, if I was going to use this, I would use it for my torch, but in this scene I thought this was more than relevant, so I created some cylinders, added a shader or material to it to make it brown, and then I also added a little sky here just to give you some context of what it would look like. And now I'm going to go ahead and render it again just to show you what it would look like. So to give it a little context, this would be a great little campfire scene if you wanted to create a flame for fire. Still rendering, by the way, but I don't have a ground plane in the scene either, so you can use your imagination, but you get the idea of what this can sort of do for your what I always like to call your toolbox. So now you've got an extra tool in there if you ever needed to create fire for any reason at all. And I think it's just super cool to know how to do, because it's definitely something that's needed in some types of scenes, films, whatever, even a still frame where you want to composite this into a still image, which is what we would be using it for here in this class. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new scene, since I kind of showed you what this is all about. And this is kind of what we're going for at the end. Sure. So now I've got a blank scene. Now I want to show you another thing that you can do. I'm going to create a simple sphere. Now this, and I'm in the effects tab also, by the way. This used to be the way I would teach it. I would still teach you fluid emitters with smoke, but I would, you know, try to make it a little bit quicker for you by just creating this little fire. So with the cylinder selected, now this doesn't work anymore for rendering, which is another major reason why I'm showing you this. So if I click here, and I gotta fix my timeline real quick. So I'm not gonna be setting any keyframes, so you know, this view of my timeline is fine. The only thing I'll ever be doing is hitting play, and now you'll see this little flame, or you know, supposed to be a flame. It used to, in years, you know, in many years or versions of Maya, this worked wonderfully. For whatever reason, it never really worked well with the Arnold renderer, but you could switch it to the Maya software and it would work perfect, and now it doesn't. So just to give you an idea, Arnold can't render this sort of particle system that Maya has built in. It really did. It used to look like a perfect little flame. It was exactly what we needed to do, but unfortunately no longer it works. But I want to show you, if I go to my rendering tab and I go to render settings and I switch this to Maya software, close, render, just to make sure it's still there, it's under Maya software, and I do render current frame, you'll see nothing shows up. There should be like a flame that's literally rendering there, and it just doesn't work anymore for whatever reason. So I just wanted to go ahead and show you. We're going to cover some of the other ones. Some of the other ones I think still work, but we'll get to that in a different video. I'm going to create another new scene, just have a blank slate. We're going to be doing a lot in this scene, but very manageable. So I have these little note cards here, right? And if you catch me pausing for a moment, it's just because I'm trying to catch up on my notes, because there's a lot of different properties and settings that need to be changed, and you feel free to do the same. It might be helpful while you're working on this, but just to give you an idea, you're more than likely going to have to pause the video at some point, plug in some numbers, hit play, pause again, you know, and it's really just when doing this, it's sort of like trial and error. You know, you have to play with some of the settings to get it right. I have them set here, so it shouldn't be an issue, but if you're going for a different effect, it's really all about trial and error, and I'll try to explain all of the different settings, attributes, properties, whatever you want to call it, along the way, but there's no way I can cover them all. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you're on the modeling tab or any other tab, we're going to switch to the FX tab right here. Okay. So with the FX tab selected, now I am going to go to my fluids, and I'm going to go to 3D container, and I'm going to click the little the little bounding box here, right? So you'll see all my settings here. X resolution, Y resolution, all this is going to be the same. Make sure this add emitter, if this checkbox is not selected, make sure it's checked. It's the only reason why I'm really opening this bounding box. It should be like this by default, but just in case it's not, this is what it should look like, okay? This should all be the same: density rate, heat rate, fuel, fluid drop off, blah, 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 blah. Just make sure all this looks the same. You can pause the video if you need to, but it shouldn't be any different. This is just the default Maya. I'm just showing it to you just in case. So we're going to do apply and close. So it's created my emitter and it's created my fluid box. So before you do anything, if you already have this in a scene and you want to just add to it, it's typically best practice to scale, move, and rotate in position to where you need it before doing all this stuff. Just an FYI. Not mandatory, but it's definitely recommended. Now, with that being said, I'm just a stickler for this. I want my fluid box to be at, the base of it to be at 0. And then I'm going to grab my emitter separately. And if you struggle to grab it, just go into your outliner. You'll see fluid 1 and then fluid emitter 1. Just grab the fluid emitter 1. And then I'm going to drag this down, and I can bring it right to the bottom. I'm going to bring it 1 up. And I'm holding X when I do this, so it snaps to the grid, by the way. Holding X. I did the same thing with the bounding box. Or the fluid container, and I'm just going to bring it just above the bottom, just so you can see it. Now, the other thing I'm going to do, now that we've got this set, I'm happy with this scale, the rotation and the movement, right? X, Y, and Z. Everything's good. I'm going to turn off the grid just so I only see the fluid container. I just think it'll be easier, and I selected it and tapped F to focus on it directly. So with it having 2 parts to it, I'm going to try my best to get everything done on one object at a time. So I'm going to start with the container, and then I'm going to at some point switch to the emitter. I'll obviously let you know when I do that, but just want to be aware there's a point where I might have to toggle back and forth between the two, and I'll tell you when I'm doing that. But just so you know, when you're following along with the video, in case you're like, I don't see that setting, make sure you're on the right object. Okay, so selecting my fluid container, I'm going to go to my attribute editor. Although in the channel box, it does have all of these settings and things in here, I just find it easier to go to my attribute editor, and under fluid shape 1, it's got all of my properties in here. So the next thing I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start changing some of these settings. I'm going to minimize everything for now so you can see what it all looks like. This is probably what yours looks like by default. And I'm going to start just by going to the top. I'm going to do my best to start from the top and work my way down, but I might have to jump around a little bit. So I'm following off these little note cards I made to try to make it as close to the previous one I just showed you. And hopefully I didn't miss a step when I took these notes. So under my container properties, under base resolution, it's at 10. Now, there's a sort of like a misconception. You know, the higher the base resolution, the higher the quality and image quality of your fluid container, particle effect, whatever you want to call it. It's not really a particle effect, but you might hear me use the term particles from time to time. The misconception is that the higher this number is, the higher the quality of, in this case, it's going to be a flame will be. Now, it's kind of true and kind of not true because, like I said, it's a misconception. So what it really is going to do is the higher the resolution, the more calculations Maya has to run in the background to run the simulation to get it to be a higher quality. However, you know, based off of what we're using it for, I think 40 is more than enough. You know, if you set this thing to a ridiculously high number like 1,000 or 1,000,000 or 100,000 or whatever, you're going to notice that your computer's going to be slower. It's really, and the quality difference probably won't be that much for you to set it to that high. So I think 40 is a very good number. Now, quick side note. If at some point you notice your computer is running a little slow or something, you can change this base resolution lower. I think you'll all be fine. I'm pretty sure, but obviously I can't promise that. I think 40 is a good number to have a pretty good quality, as well as a good quality in terms of time to render and for Maya to run its calcs in the background, calculations. Right now I'm just changing my timeline. The only thing I'll be doing is hitting play, so make this 300. Okay, so we've created our fluid container. And the only reason why I changed my timeline is because with the end cloth simulator, I learned pretty quickly that I was trying to have right around here, you know, frame 0 or 1, and I was noticing glitching happening during my simulation, so that's why I changed my timeline. I'm not setting any keyframes, so you don't really need to see this. The only thing you'll need to know is that I'm hitting play. So I'm hitting play now just to show you what's happening. By default, the only thing we changed was the resolution. And you're noticing, I always think of this as like a poison gas chamber that Batman from like the old Adam West Batman TV series. You know, he has X amount of time to escape from it, but it just always reminds me of that. And you'll see that it's just like an invisible glass or a glass box, right? You can see where it's stopping. Now, what it's doing is this container is basically containing the area in which it knows where to run the simulation. If you could let it run rampant and wild and have infinite amount of space to run these calculations, it basically has to run infinite amount of calculations in the background, which will cause your computer to run slow, crash, etc. It's just too much to process. So that's the reason why we use this fluid container. Now, moving forward with that being said, we are going to change some settings so that it will be able to do a lot of things, but we're also going to tell Maya at some point when we get there that after X amount of time, we want it to start to dissipate, basically. We want it to disappear so you don't have to run all these calculations in the background and work yourself to death, right? So the next thing we are going to do, and I'm going to try to work my way down here in this attribute editor. I might jump around from here or there, but I'm going to do my best to work straight down the line. Under container properties, under base resolution, I set to 40. Now under contents method, under temperature, I'm going to set to dynamic grid. Okay, so I set it to dynamic grid. Now, you have your density. That would be the density of your fluid. In this case, we're going to create fire. Right now it looks like smoke, so I'll just use the term smoke until we get there. Velocity, basically the velocity or rate of speed of it, in a way. Your dynamic grid on the temperature. So the grid is basically, here's your little grid here at the bottom. You're setting it to follow the grid in terms of temperature. So it actually, you can actually, with it off, you might not see anything yet, so I won't get there, but basically you'll be able to see a slight little temperature on the outside of it, of your flame. And we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now, under the display tab, make sure your shaded display is as render. If it's different, make sure you just change it to be as render. Under slices per voxel, we're going to leave it there. Voxel quality, that's fine. Bounding draw. Now the bounding draw, if I change it to none, you won't see the container at all. If I set it to bounding box, you'll just see the box. If you do bottom, it's just how it draws this out for you. I'm going to just leave it as is. And basically what this is saying is it's only going to calculate everything inside that box. And you could always change it to bounding box. It doesn't make any real difference. I'll leave it as by default at bottom. Oh, if you set it to none, it totally disappears. But I would do the bounding draw to bottom for now. We might change it later, but really no need. The other thing we're going to do is, this is a really cool feature. Now you'll notice it stops at the end of the bounding box, like it's in a glass container that, you know, the old school Adam West Batman's trying to escape out of. I'm going to set it to this little on auto resize to, I'm just going to click this checkbox alone, nothing else. And now when I go ahead and play it back from the beginning, you'll notice that it resizes it instantly. So now the bounding box is much smaller in terms of what it needs to calculate. So it's only really calculating what it needs to calculate. Now the problem with this is, if I had like a million frames, it's got to hold all this information up until it, you know, for infinite, because it's we haven't told it to do anything else. So you'll see it just continues to climb. Now, it's more narrow, so it's going to be able to calculate more quickly, but we still have to get to the point where we tell this to disappear. So now, with that being said, let's go to the next step. We are going to go to dynamic simulation. Under dynamic simulation, we're going to change the sub-steps from 1 to 2. So it's basically just taking one extra sub-step of calculation. It's going to make a quality a little bit better. Don't set it crazy high. We're going to change the solver quality from 20 to 25, which is directly underneath that. If you set this solver quality number way too high, it will definitely slow down your computer, causing it to possibly crash, etc., etc. So, like I said earlier, I think I said this earlier, if at any time you notice your computer being slow, or if you run into it crashing or anything, just set these numbers to be lower, even lower than the default, okay? The solver quality, the sub-steps, and definitely the base resolution, probably like everything. Just tone it down a notch, and it should be fine. But I think these are realistic settings and properties that I'm pushing in here for it to work fine. Okay, so under the contents details tab, I can find it now. I don't think it's in alphabetical order. It like starts to, but then it stops to. So under the contents detail tab, it's this tab right here. I'm gonna go ahead and click it, and you're gonna notice you get all these little sub tabs here. Under density, we are going to change the buoyancy to 10. Bear with me, I'm just verifying that I'm doing this right. Yeah. Under density, we're going to change we're going to increase the buoyancy to 10. We're going to leave the density scale. We're going to change the buoyancy to 10. So the buoyancy allows the smoke to rise faster. So basically we just increase the rate of speed at which this is moving. The other thing we're going to do is set the dissipation to 15. So what we just did is, actually no, my mistake. We're going to set this dissipation to 2. Excuse me, we're going to go to a different dissipation that we're going to set to 15. So the dissipation basically is the rate at which it disappears. Okay, so dissipation disappears. So this way it doesn't have to calculate as much. So I ran it, play for it with buoyancy at 10. Now when we run the dissipation now, you'll notice it's thinner, it's starting to dissipate, and then it finally stops on my timeline here around give or take 200, and that's where it starts to dissipate. So you'll see we've basically just set some boundary laws for Maya in the simulation that we want the speed to be faster and we want it to disappear at a certain time. Okay. And yeah, the next thing, I'm not going to use it, but if you wanted to blur something, the diffusion isn't like your diffuse map. It's basically a blur technique on this. So if you needed to blur anything like your flame or something, you could do that. But it's not like a diffuse map. Just wanted to clarify that. And the dissipation, not only will it sort of disappear, it's also just to control the size of your bounding box to make sure it's not getting out of control. So Maya doesn't have all these extra infinite calculations it has to make. Moving on to the temperature tab. We are going to change the temperature scale to 20. We're going to change the buoyancy to 10, and we are going to change the dissipation to 15, and I'm going to set the noise to 0.1. We're going to give it a little bit of noise, and basically what that does is it kind of, gives it that little extra sort of, in this case, it's going to give it a little touch of the sporadic nature of a flame. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Let me start it from frame 0 actually first, and let's just see what we've done here. So not too much difference in terms of what we're seeing. I think the bounding box is stopping about 40 frames earlier is what I'm seeing. I could be mistaken, but all these adjustments are going to do there's small adjustments, so they're hard to see right away, but by the time we get to the end of it, you'll see that flame that I'm talking about. So excuse me. We're going to go to velocity under the content details. And under velocity, we are going to change the swirl to 0.5. Now the swirl, you name it, so now it's going to have a little bit of a swirl to it. The higher the number, the more the swirl. So let's just go ahead and hit play. Like I said, we're going to be doing such small motions to it, so we want it to slowly kind of do this. If you wanted to get really crazy, you could increase it. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're also going to change the turbulence to 5. So we're going to adjust that turbulence to 5. So turbulence, like in an airplane, it gets shaky, da 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 da. So with the noise and the swirl, it should start to get a little bit more. And you can actually kind of start to see it. Let me zoom in a little bit because I was kind of far out. Let's just tap F. You can start to see that, those little waves and swirl and turbulence kind of happening, right? So, the next thing, the shading tab. The only thing we can really see is the incandescence in a moment, and it may not even show. Shading. Give me a second to find it. I'm looking for shading quality. Under, there it is. I had it open, I didn't even realize. So, under shading quality, or no, not shading quality, under shading, under color, I'm going to change it to black. And now you can see a little bit more of what I was talking about. If I scroll down, you're going to be able to see what is called the incandescence, and this is what is known as a ramp shader, where it's, many of you might know it as a gradient, same exact difference, but in Maya they call it a ramp shader. Now, I'm going to leave the ramp shader, but by changing the color to black, and basically what we did is we just made it invisible, right, for the most part. I mean, you can't see all that white smoke. And now we're starting to get the first sort of, you can sort of see the flame. I don't know if you can see it, but you're starting to get your first presence of this fire actually coming to take light, right? So, shading tab. Okay, I'm on to my next note card here. All right. Oh, one cool thing. If I go to my wireframe mode by tapping 4 on my keyboard, you'll actually be able to see the little particles. I think that's kind of neat. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to tap 5, and now you can actually see what's happening with the shader on, but now you can see all the little particles of what it's doing. So I think that's a little cool little side note, so you can actually visually see how Maya is sort of converting those particles into this visual shader that's on the flame itself. Okay. So now we're going to select our emitter. I might have to jump back to the fluid container box, but let's just stick with the emitter for now. The first thing I'm going to do with my emitter selected is under basic emitter attributes, I'm going to set the rate here to, now this is going to set basically the rate of the flame in this case. I'm going to set it to 800. You can always play around with it and see what you come up with. But I'm going to go ahead and play it, and now you're really starting to see that fire, right? Now it's really starting to come to life. Okay. So the next thing, and if you wanted it to be a smaller flame, bring down this to, let's say 500, and it'll keep it a little bit smaller, but I think it's cool to just keep it at 800 for now. Anyway, we're starting to get this fire. And it's got some cool waving happen. It's starting to look naturally like a fire, but we haven't gotten all the way yet. Basic emitter attributes. I might have missed a note here. So, under fluid attributes, under heat method, we are going to change the heat voxels a second to 2. Okay. It's going to just add to the heat of this flame, basically. It's going to just look a little bit different. But like I said, we're going to be making such small changes at a time that rarely will we see the full sort of picture. Maybe 2 is too little. Let's try 15. $15 is definitely like a wildfire. Let's bring it back to 2. Yeah, that's much better. At least for the effect that I'm going for. But you can see what the difference is. Next thing's next. Content detail. We're going to go to the contents detail tab next. And fluid drop off. Oh, fluid drop off. Change this to 1. Okay, or 0.1, excuse me, not 1, 0.1. Sorry about the delay. Changing my turbulence if I can find it. Turbulence. Just make sure. shading color, incandescence. Under my content details, turbulence, that's what the one I was looking for. I'm going to change my strength to 0.25. And then let's run a play again. It's really starting to come along. And shading is next. So under the shading tab, which I have right here, we're going to select the color on the transparency, and we're going to set V to, oops, instead of it being, this is basically the just adjusting it slightly. So we're going to set the V to 0.2, and you're going to notice a slight color change here, because we've just made it less to be able to see. And you'll notice that from 0.25 to 0.2 is a significant difference. Drop off shape. We are going to set it to be negative Y gradient. Okay. And that's just going to adjust it from being positive Y to be negative Y. Edge drop off. I'm going to change the edge drop off to 0.7. Hit play again. Okay. And you know what? I'm gonna change this back to cube. I didn't like the way it was looking. So we're gonna change that one back to cube. Okay. So drop off shape, I had it set to negative Y. Really wasn't liking the results. So I changed it back to cube, and it looks much, much, much better. Incandescent. Okay, so under incandescence, this is basically going to be what our colors are for this, right? And I'm going to click this little arrow here next to my incandescence. And now I've got all these different things. Now I've created, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, a little kind of drag a yellow, orange. So it's really just a matter of visually looking at it. This doesn't have to be perfect on your end. It doesn't need to be perfect on my end. We're just going to see what we can get for it to create some of the best results. So I created that little graph for my personal notes. I'm going to go and try to follow it the best I can. And you'll notice as I slide, and I'm just clicking and sliding on this one. Here, maybe I can make it bigger. I'm clicking and sliding on this. Oh, I don't want it to be too big because then you can't see the changes that are happening. So this is probably a good size. So I'm clicking and dragging on the center color, and you'll notice everything sort of changes as I do that, and the gradients sort of change on this, right? So the first color is going to be black. I'm going to go ahead and drag this over, and I'm going to try to set this to be more of an orange. Here you can see my previous color palette of different oranges and yellows and colors that I was using. So I'm going to try to replicate it the best that I can. I try to go for these oranges and stuff. So I've got orange. I didn't specify on my notes if it was dark orange or light orange. And now I'm going to add another one. And I'm going to go ahead and click again here. And I'm going to change this color to be a different orange. maybe a darker orange. I don't really know. It's just like, you just got to play around with it, honestly. Um, we'll try that. The next one I'm going to do is going to be yellow. So I'm just clicking right in the middle. You'll see if I click and hold, this is going to be yellow. And then we'll go like here. Change the color. This is supposed to be like a bright yellow. And then I'm going to create another one. This will be a slightly different yellow. Just giving my best shot here. My specialty definitely doesn't lie with effects, but I know them well enough to be able to teach them to you. So we'll go with that. The next one is going to be orange. Kind of good with that orange. Maybe look at there. The next one's going to be another orange. And then the last one, maybe I play around with the color wheel a little bit. A little darker red orange, right? Couldn't hurt. And my last one, I got another one here. Maybe I bring these two closer. And select the color. So I'm making sure this is highlighted, and then I'm selecting the color down here. Make that yellow. And this last one, I don't know. Let's just go with that. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to try that and see what it looks like. And now you'll see that your little incandescence has this slightly different ramp shader. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Now you can always adjust this to be however you want it to look. You could even change it, like if you wanted it to have blue in it because your flame has blue, that might be a better option for whatever you're trying to do. Like, you know, a gas stove, the stove comes up, it's got that hint or hue of blue at the bottom before it goes into the flames. You might even want to use white flames. So you can change it to be whatever, but I'm just showing you how I did it. And the next thing I'm going to do is, this might need to be closer. Maybe I need another yellow here. Nah, maybe not. And oh, if you wanted to get rid of one of these, there's actually a little X at the bottom. Just hit the X and it'll disappear. And let's make this a little bit darker, maybe. So it looks like, no. You get the idea. All right, I'm not gonna sweat over it. Okay, maybe I am. Let's add, just for fun, I didn't use any red in my last one. Let's try that. Give it a little bit more hue of a red. All right, now the other thing, we're gonna go to the opacity tab, and what we're trying to get out of this. So I'm gonna hit play real quick. You'll notice I got this flame. It's looking like a flame, right? It's got the turbulence, it's got some sway, some, you know, some of that swirl and all that kind of effect going on for it. But I want to get a little bit more extra out of it. So I want to change some of the opacity properties. Again, I have my little note here. I've created the little graph of what it is. Yours doesn't need to be perfect. I just thought it would be cool to show you. And I'm going to try to replicate it how I did the last one because I thought the results were pretty decent. And you just click on this graph to create, and you can click a little X if you wanted to. And you'll see I'm really pulling some of these colors out of it now with this opacity map. And let's see, we'll go here, and we'll go here, and we'll go here, and we'll go here. We're going to go straight down. We're going to go back up. We're going to go straight down, and then I'm going to drag this last one down. And I don't know if it's like my other one, but it doesn't need to be perfect. This one doesn't do much here, so we'll exit that one. All right, so we're going to try that, and we're going to hit play again. And you'll see it's starting to really have this cool flame to it. I think I might like this one better than the other one I made. I don't know. To give you an idea where we're at with the render, if we go to Arnold Render, it's really starting to get some cool flame properties to it. Let's play it a little bit more. I'll zoom out so I can get a better render. Oh. Arnold Render. Just trying to get a feel for what I'm working with here. I think it's looking great. Now, under the Dynamic Simulation tab here, we are going to change High Detail Solve from off to all grids. So High Detail Solve from off to all grids. Now we're going to go Arnold and render again. It actually got a little bit brighter. I don't know if you saw that, unless my eyes were playing tricks on me. And we're going to just go ahead and hit play. And now it's actually, it seems like it's taken a little bit longer to render. So if that High Detail Solve is slowing to your computer too much, just leave it off. But you'll see the effects that I'm getting with this flame. I think it's really, really neat. I think it's super cool. You can wrap around it. Got some really neat effects going on here. And then one last thing I'd like to show you. Yeah, and this one just increases the detail on the fire all the way around. The one last thing I'd like to show you, because this is done now, we've created our fire. Under my rendering tab, if I go to render and render settings, now this is only if you want a higher quality render. If I go to Arnold Renderer and I change camera AA from 3 by default to 5, my render should be a little bit higher quality. I wouldn't set that number too high. You'll see it's going to take longer down here to render. You don't need to do it. I just thought I would do it just to show you if you wanted to increase quality. And I think it's a perfect little flame for the torch that I was originally going for. Now, like I did before, just to give it some context, I'm going to go ahead and click on Arnold, Lights, Physical Sky, and then I created those logs. Control D. You guys know how to do this stuff now. All right, so I'm just gonna stick with those two for now, just to give it a little bit of context. And then layer, create layer from selected. What was I? Physical Sky? I can't remember. Save. And then I'm just going to hide it for a second. Oops. And there. Save. I'll rename this log 1. This is exactly how I had the first one I showed you. And then I could always change this to whatever name I wanted, fire, fluid box, or whatever. But anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to turn this on just to give you a little context. I know that those are still gray. but you actually see this flame sort of roaring through it. Let me see if I can get a... And yeah, so you can see that it's... I probably need a little bit more toggling. I'm getting a little too much extra black in there. I got to figure out how to figure that, get to that point where I have less. But it's really just a matter of playing with these settings. I'm sure if I played around with those opacity settings a little bit more, I'd get there. Also changing the incandescence. Like, I have it starting on black. I could probably change that, and it might change it, but yeah, you see how the first one is black? Maybe if I knock that one out. Whoa, let's see what that does. I think I want to leave that one on. But anyway, if you do have questions, feel free to shoot me a message on Canvas inbox. I hope you enjoyed this lab. I know it's a little tricky in terms of following along because of the changing all these little numbers with all of these crazy amounts of tabs, but there's just so much that goes into these effects that you can really, honestly, you could create almost anything you wanted. I've seen some amazing where, you know, like it reminds me of the Fantastic Four, the guy that's on fire, what's his name? Johnny, I can't remember, but I've seen some people who can create that body of flame. They have like a human mesh, then they do this type of particle effects and emitters and yada yada, and they get this guy just totally on fire just in CGI. It's unbelievable what they're capable of doing. But I hope you enjoyed this lab. I'm going to cover another one on smoke. If you do have questions, shoot me a message on Canvas inbox. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Stay tuned for it, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for following along.